to the combat zone, where the enemy's only battle cries are bail out, abandon ship, and take cover.
Okay.
That should work.
I think we should be very clear. You know what we haven't done yet? We have not yet identified who the enemy is. So
that's a good point.
Let's just take a minute. Oh, hang on just a second. Maybe we should introduce ourselves. I'm Joe. And he's Nick.
And I'm Nick. I'm sorry. I'm looking up Climate Barbie's name and and her official title.
Okay.
You know what? I'll do this later.
This is like
now is not the time to be doing this.
This is like this live to tape stuff, and you know it's we're trying really hard not to edit these podcasts before we post them. So if it sounds a little rough,
it raw,
rough and raw. Who are the enemies, though? Like.
When I say the word enemies, I'm talking about people who are socialistically minded, progressively minded in the modern sense, not in the traditional sense. Like you and I are what we would call classic liberals, where we believe in more personal responsibility, smaller government. All the things that conservatives now claim as their territory used to be what the liberals 100 to 150 years ago would claim as their territory. So the term has been flipped on its head. So now anybody who promotes ideas, and here's what I would call progressive ideas, diversity, equality of outcome, affirmative action, those kind of things are what we call progressive policies. And from my perspective, they are damaging, they're acidic, and they tear at the fabric of the country. And these things are not good and should be challenged everywhere they're met.
Yeah, forced diversity. Diversity is not a bad thing in and of itself.
Yeah, right. Government sanctioned. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, government forced, government imposed.
It's like multiculturalism.
Ersatz diversity.
Right.
It's funny, actually, this is a great topic because, and this wasn't actually in our list of topics for today, but, we're just going to go with the flow, right?
Right.
But the interesting thing about the forced diversity is that it's never actually about real diversity, that is to say, different modes of thinking and doing things. It's always about diversity in what I like to call the accoutrements of culture. So, we only want to be diverse if it means that we have, well, frankly, different colored skin, but also we eat different foods, or we listen to different styles of music, or we dress differently. So, when we celebrate diversity, we don't actually talk about how people think and their real culture, but we always go to what are the sort of the
window dressing.
The window dressing culture, okay?
Right.
Well, this is a diverse crowd because they dress differently. Some people dress, in Middle Eastern garb, if I could use that term, African garb, if I could use that term. You have people like this, or we listen to different cultural music, or, gosh, we eat different types of food, and now we have a diverse crowd. But the minute you start to talk differently about your ideas, if you have different ideas and how they think, then, oh, no, we don't want diversity there. No, we want, you have to toe the line. You have to be left-wing, socialistic, especially in our universities and our colleges, and more and more in our high schools and our elementary schools. We could do 100 shows on those.
Yeah. There's a great quote that, and it might have been Milton Friedman, it might have been one of the great, conservative thinkers who said that progressives, or he probably used the word socialists or something like that, but he's talking about that broad group of progressives, are only interested in what you think until they find out that you don't think the same way as they do. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but the bottom line is they want diversity as long as it is in line with who and what they are. The moment you actually get into real diversity, now you've got a problem. And you saw that with Dr. Peterson when he stood up and said, I will not be using all these silly acronyms or silly prefixes when people want to be identified as, gender fluid and all this nonsense. He said, you can't tell me what to say. I'm not going to do that. All of a sudden, all hell broke loose because he wasn't towing the line. They wanted to put him, as long as you go along with us, then we celebrate you. But the moment you step out of that trench, the moment you step out of that line or groove, now your problem, not us, because we're so open-minded. Well, I think what happens with a lot of these progressives is they get so open-minded, their brain falls out. And they forget the fact that diversity means more than just, hey, man, nice earring, nice nose ring. Hey, man, love that music. There's more to diversity than that.
I don't even think that it's a question of more to diversity. I think that thinking outside of the box, thinking differently than other people, and expressing those thoughts differently than other people is what real diversity is all about. And if you really are truly committed to diversity, then you have to be open to listening to and promoting or at least protecting ideas that are fundamentally different than yours.
What did Voltaire say?
This whole thing today about diversity is it's a fraud. It's a farce. The left is not promoting diversity. They're promoting conformity. They're promoting one single track of thinking, and when you stray off of that path, you're vilified, you're attacked, you're persecuted, you're prosecuted more and more. So, yeah, diversity.
Well, this is I'm reminded. I think it was Voltaire who said that we're talking about free speech and so on, which fits into this discussion. He said, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will fight to the death to defend your right to say it. That idea, from a progressive point of view, if it gets lip service, that's it. Because look at the Ben Shapiro events out in Berkeley. Look at Ann Coulter here in Ottawa. Look at, again, Jordan Peterson. Protests against somebody who has a different worldview than what's being taught in our universities and high schools. And in larger sections now, you have it even being incorporated within the corporate world, where they have one of Peterson's interviews that I was watching the other day was with the Australia Broadcasting Corporation. He held up their manifesto on diversity, and it had a hammer and sickle on it. Literally, a hammer and sickle. He got quite a laugh out of that.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I watched the video. Sure enough, he held up a red book with a yellow hammer and sickle on it. And that didn't seem to bother anybody.
Well, it ought to. I think also, by the way, we have to be a little bit more pointed in who the enemy is on this show. It's not just progressives, and you've made a fairly lengthy list or description of the different characteristics, but let's cut right to the chase. Let's just call them what they are. They're liberals.
Yes. In this case, liberals and the NDP.
In the modern sense of the term liberal.
Yes, those are the ones that because they're the ones who, at the moment, are running the vast majority of shows across this country.
But not us.
No, they don't run us.
Not us.
They try, but when you've got people like Kathleen Wynne, who are imposing an agenda upon a province that no one in their right mind would say is good for the province, unless you have this worldview, like you don't look at the province as an entity unto itself. You look at it as a piece in a jigsaw puzzle, making up a much larger picture. If you accept that as her worldview, which is what I think is a pretty easy thing to do, then her comments make a little more sense. I don't agree with them, okay, but it's all part of this massive movement towards driving the whole planet to a socialistic utopia.
So, Nick, you wanted to talk a little bit today about Rob Ford and some of the things going on between him and the media already. Rob Ford, for those, again, of you who follow to a certain degree Canadian politics, is the brother of the former mayor of Toronto.
You got it backwards. Okay. Rob Ford is the former mayor of Toronto.
I can't believe I was doing that.
The late former mayor.
The late.
And Doug Ford.
Yeah, what am I saying? You see, I'm always making that. Everybody's making that mistake.
You were just on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, well, if Doug is listening to this, sorry, my bad, man. I'm going to. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to walk across hot coals. That's for sure.
No, just send him a letter, a note.
I think, Doug, you need to send us a note so we can read your email on the air.
There you go.
And just be as critical.
Plug you in with the listeners.
That's it. Anyway, I'm gonna. Doug is the new leader of the Progressive Conservatives in Ontario, and so I'll let you take it from there, Nick. While I
done digging?
I have to regroup a little bit here. I have to stop digging the hole.
Well, in the press, it was either yesterday or the day before. Certainly within the last 3 or 4 days. There's a story out of the Toronto Sun how the press cannot get over the fact that Doug Ford canceled the tour bus for the upcoming campaign here for the election in Ontario, which is election day is the 6th or 7th of June. I think it's the 6th.
The 7th.
7th. Okay. So on the 7th of June is the next election. And normally what parties do is they go and rent one of these big old Voyager buses. They pack all their important people in it, and they tour the province. And Doug said, I'm not doing that. And the the media is going crazy. Now, if that's his biggest sin, if he says if that's all they can find to go after him for, now it's early, and you can hear the excavators running in the background. They're digging up dirt trying to find, little nuggets to go after him with. But if that's all they can find, here's a guy who said, I don't want to burden the party with the expense of a bus. Now, how he's going to get around, because he obviously has to travel, maybe it's by private car. Maybe he's going to rent a Suburban. I don't know, but it's going to be a lot less. Think about what it costs to run one of those things. Doesn't that give you an insight into the kind of mentality he has when it comes to respecting money that isn't his? And when you're vying to be one of the most powerful men in Canada, the Premier of Ontario, that bodes well for how he's going to handle your money when it comes time for him to sit on the throne here in Ontario. And yet the press can't get over it. They can't believe he canceled it. So I'm thinking to myself, if the press is upset about this, he's probably on the right track.
Right. And just to clarify for our listeners, when Nick refers to throne, he's not referring to the throne in the throne room, that is to say what the monarch sits on, nor is he referring to that other throne room and other thrones. Okay. You make a great point that I want to emphasize. And that point is other people's money.
Precisely.
Because too often we forget, even as taxpayers, when we talk about programs and we talk about government spending, we forget that this money that's being spent is our money. It's your money, it's my money, and worse than that, as we've talked about before on previous podcasts, it's our children's money, and it's our grandchildren's money, and it's our great-grandchildren's money, and the money of future generations, because we don't even have the money to live within, to live up to the means that, or the spending that the current government is imposing on us. So we end up having to borrow. So I'm always astonished by how easily people forget that it's not government money. The government should spend money in this area. No, the government doesn't spend money in this area. The government takes your money and forces you to spend in this area or on this program.
Or spends it on your behalf.
I don't even like saying that. That's giving them too much credit. They're not spending it on my behalf. I don't agree with half of the spending that they do. They're taking my money, confiscating my money, and spending it on things that I don't agree with. Now, I understand we live in a democracy and there's got to be a decision-making process.
Right.
And our duly elected representatives are going to make these kinds of decisions. Whatever, okay? I get all of that. But regardless of the outcome or the process by which the decision is made, it's still always our money. I remember I had a conversation with somebody at City Hall once about a program with buses when they were computerizing the call-out for bus stops, so that the bus driver didn't have to call out the name of the bus stop anymore because they had deemed that was too dangerous. It was too distracting for the buses.
Yeah.
And I was at this meeting, and the discussion centered actually around the cost and the fact that it was only going to cost, I think it was around $25 million at the time. And I remember talking to a city councillor after the meeting, and she told me that exactly that. Well, yeah, but it's not a whole lot of money. And my reaction was, yeah, but it's not your money.
Right.
It's their money, pointing to the guys in the audience in the back that were attending this council meeting. It's this mindset that somehow or other, once it's been taxed, it belongs to the government. You know, revolutions have been fought and won and lost over this particular issue. So we're not advocating a revolution here. Probably not. You know, maybe a figurative revolution, but it's not their money. It's my money. It's your money. It's our grandchildren's money, for pity's sake. So let's treat it with the respect it deserves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, of course. The idea that governments, and it's not unique to city halls, every level of government has this mentality that, well, first of all, it's not a lot of money. Well, wait a minute. $1 million, $5 million, $25 million, $1 billion. It's a lot of money. How many of you could sit down and stroke a check for that kind of money?
Right.
It's a lot of money,
But
and they've lost that sense.
But even if it's not a lot of money, even if it's just $5, it's not your $5.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you guys, you're hearing it here first. I have not bounced this off of anyone around me. I have not discussed this with Nick. But let's have a segment in every podcast, other people's money. And the whole point is to illustrate just one bit of government spending, whether it's municipal, federal, provincial, it could be here in Canada, it could be in the States, it could be anywhere. Just stupid spending of other people's money. Let's highlight every week. You guys,
no more paper clips for you.
Every week, guys, send us your suggestions, and we will choose the most outrageous example of government spending your money on useless, stupid things, all because, and I'm going to be a little hard on taxpayers and citizens here, not because they consider it their money, but because too many of us, too many of you out there, hardworking taxpayers, go along with the idea that it's their money. What do you say, Nick? You think that's a great idea?
I think that's a fantastic idea. We can't leave Jackknife Sadiq. I've just nicknamed him Jackknife Sadiq out of the equation on today's podcast.
Sadiq Khan. So violence is up in the city of London, and I believe that for the first time ever in the first quarter of the year 2018, the murder rate in London has surpassed the murder rate in New York City.
Yes,
and they're both of comparable size. So part of the reaction to this is that the mayor of the city of London, England, by the way, not London, Canada, or London, Ontario, has decided to launch a campaign against knives.
Yes.
So he's calling now for, get ready, guys, knife control.
Yes.
Right.
There are even deposit boxes scattered around the city where people can drop off their knives.
So we're just thinking, this is such a colossally, we don't. Maybe we have to have a stupid government segment, not just stupid government spending, but just stupid government period. Maybe we should just have like a stupid politician segment.
I don't know if anybody's ever going to top the congressman from Georgia who was afraid that the island of Guam would roll over if they put on too many GIs on the island. Nobody's going to top that. But we could call it the wobbly.
Real?
Yeah, that's for real.
I hadn't heard that one.
Oh, you haven't seen that? Watch it after the podcast's over. Go to YouTube, look up Dumbest Politician. It's about a 2-minute, 13-second clip. And here you have the Admiral of the U.S. Fleet, okay, the top sailor in the country, explaining to a congressman out of Georgia. He said, and the guy from Georgia is trying to get an idea of how big this island, 21 miles long by 9 miles wide, and he goes over that a bunch of times. And he says, I don't see what your issue is. He said, well, I'm just worried that if too many people get on this island, it'll literally, he takes his hand and he rolls it over, turns his hand, that the island will roll over. And I just about died. I couldn't believe anybody.
What does he think this is, like an artificial floating island?
He doesn't know what an island is. He doesn't realize the top of a mountain sticking up out of the water. He thinks it's made out of reeds, like on Lake Titicaca, where you get the big reed mat beds.
Even those islands that the Chinese have built in the South China Sea
are anchored to the floor.
Islands.
Yeah,
they may be man-made, they may be artificial, but they really are islands.
You got to look that up. So we could call it the Wobbly Island Award.
Okay.
God, oh Lord, love it, Duck. I can't believe you haven't seen that.
But knife control?
Yes.
I mean, really, come on. We have to reduce knife violence in the city of London.
Yeah, it never occurs to these people that you could take away the butter knives. You could take away the spoons and the next thing would be forks, by the way, because you could do a lot of damage with the fork.
I actually heard that somebody was stabbed with a fork after they came up with this knife policy.
Oh my God! But
I know,
never occurs to them.
We shouldn't be laughing at this because it's really, first of all, of course, we're talking about violence, so nobody's. I mean, we feel bad if people are hurt, and
oh yeah,
and if it's knives, okay,
that's
well,
not
sure,
what we're laughing at.
But
that's a tragedy.
Okay, like what's the next thing now? We're going to have knife control. We're going to have a knife registry. Okay, so in the city of London, people, get ready for it. You will have to register your dinner knives, your butter knives, with the government, and watch out because they might be confiscating those.
You're going to have to lock up your carving set for your roast beast in a safe and make sure that the knife is over here and the fork you hold the meat with is locked up someplace else to keep it safe so nobody could use them both at the same time.
Do you know what's really interesting about this, actually, seriously? Just set aside for a second the knife issue. But when I was following up on this, getting some further information, because it was one of those things you go, okay, that cannot be true. It just cannot be true.
It is.
And then I read it and I give myself sort of a figurative slap because I go, okay, it was so stupid, it had to be true.
Nobody could make this up on their own.
But on a serious note, I notice that the mayor is also calling for expanded stop and search in violent neighborhoods in London.
Did you know
meaning that the police stop somebody who might look a little bit suspicious, and they search them. And
Isn't that racial profiling?
And if you, it's culinary profiling because they're looking for knives.
Now,
so
there was a time.
So I gotta go.
Go ahead.
If you woe betide the person who gets caught walking down the street wearing an apron or a baker's cap.
Oh, God.
Because you are going to be in trouble. You are for sure
You'd
going
better
to be,
leave that at home.
You're going to be profiled. I guarantee it.
Now, there was a time in English history where this kind of thing happened before. This is not new. When William the Conqueror invaded England, it was against the law to even carry a bowstring. You weren't allowed a sword. You weren't allowed a knife. You weren't allowed a bow. And people would carry with them some string to run a snare because you had to harvest food somehow. But because he was so afraid of the population uprising against him in revolt, he banned all weapons. And a weapon could mean anything. The bowstring could be used like a garrote. There was all kinds of different things that he banned, and people were either severely punished, if not executed for.
Gosh, banning knives, right?
What would Churchill say?
Now, there are rules about how big a knife you can cut. It's not just a new thing. I mean, in fairness to the mayor,
too.
There are rules about how big a knife you can carry and for what purposes, etc. And the mayor might be right, by the way, when he says there's really no reason for people to be walking around with 6-inch and 7-inch blades. And I'm not saying that's not an exact quote, but that's more or less what he was saying, and he's got a point. But once again, okay, no pun intended, by the way.
Don't do that when I take him up full of water. He's got a point. Most knives do.
But seriously though, okay, is this really something that you want to get into and have regulations around it? Like I said, what's the next thing? A knife registry? And by the way, okay,
that's what we're talking about.
By the way, all right, my steak knife or my butter knife has a longer than the 3-inch blade. Okay, now I was about to say you can't really do much damage with my butter knife, but you could. And by the way, one last thought on this: if you guys in London, England, don't think that this is going to cost you millions of pounds for this new enforcement campaign and the ad campaign.
Oh, man.
Okay, because everybody knows that the criminal intent on committing a crime using a knife is going to be walking down the street, and he's going to see the sign saying, there's no reason for carrying around these knives, and he's going to go, boy, you're right. Better change my plans. I'm going to go home and get, I don't know, a gun.
Yeah, or a baseball or cricket bat. That'll be the next thing. Somebody will get bludgeoned to death with a cricket bat, and there you go.
It happens.
Of course it does. You ever watch those cricket matches? Those are violent.
No,
or is that soccer?
I don't have soccer. It's terrible.
Oh man.
But I don't have 3 days to watch a long cricket match. Okay. So we're bumping up against our 30 minutes here. I think we've gone over time again.
Imagine that.
So send us your comments. And we have a few emails, and I intended to read one or two of them out today, but it didn't happen. So I apologize. My bad again. We'll do it again. So this is it. Comments at thecombatzone.ca. That's comments with an S, so it's plural, at the combatzone.ca. And don't forget, don't just send us your comments about the show, but we want to hear from you about your examples or your experience with stupid government spending. And now I guess we'll expand that and say stupid politicians as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I guess we'll sign off and we'll catch you the next time.
All right, thanks for listening.